So the story that I'm told by my mum is that when she was in labour with me, she could hear bombing. So it was a pretty scary beginning to life when you're born into a country that is at war. Flightless bird, big bill. As a child, I remember Dad coming home and sort of in a bit of a panic and saying that we have to quickly pack up and go. And so I remember that lots of bombing getting closer that night, and they were telling us to quickly get out of bed and go down, had to sort of shelter ourselves against the rice bags, because Mum and Dad were business owners, and if you had a business then you were thought of as a capitalist, and if you were a capitalist then you were pro-American, and if you're pro-American then you were anti-communist, and if you were anti-communist then you were put into jail. We left Vietnam on a fishing boat that was supposedly 24 metres long, and I think there were about 700 people on it. So we sailed out of Vietnam, and usually between Vietnam and Malaysia you can get attacked by Thai pirates. We were chased by pirate ships, and I remember seeing these pirates with like really raggedy long hair, and I mean they kind of look a typical pirate looking, quite scary and rough and kind of dirty looking. The men knew that if we let them on board that bad things can happen, like they would steal, they would rape, some people even got killed. They were chasing us and they got close to us, and then they threw these kind of hooks, but the men chopped the ropes and we speeded away, and yeah, they didn't manage to catch up. So we were one of the very few boats that didn't get robbed by the Thai pirates, and that's quite a legend apparently. We might have had an idea of where we were going, but actually nobody knew, because nobody's left Vietnam before on the boat, and so we were kind of just heading somewhere, but we weren't sure exactly where, just away from Vietnam basically. And then we managed to actually drift to an island called Tio Man Island near Singapore, and so we were there for at least a month. And my parents, they wrote messages of asking for help, and they snuck these letters to the Singaporean Chinese tourists, and they must have taken it to the Red Cross or the World Vision or whoever, and eventually the authorities sent three small boats to come and get us. When the New Zealand delegate came to the camp, we decided that we would apply to come to New Zealand. And then when we got to New Zealand though, we were put into the refugee hostel, and we were there for 2 weeks, and then our sponsors came and visited us, and the sponsors are the Donahues, Frank and Joy Donahue, with their 5 children, and they were in charge of the sponsoring. And after the time was up, we went and lived with them for a couple of weeks.
We had heard that people in New Zealand were sponsoring refugees, so we decided we'd go up to our church, St Therese at Three Kings, and ask the parish council if they would sponsor a family. We were asked to go out to Mangere where they were. My first impression was how thin and small and pale they all were. They really looked like refugees. That was my very first impression. Yeah, I know you had a brown paper bag each, that's all you had. Yeah. And I remember thinking, gosh.
They found us a state house that we shared with a lovely New Zealand woman called Molly, but I actually call her Nan. She's like my grandmother, really. She's 94 now.
Oh, well, I've always liked men, haven't I, Jonah?
Yes.
I've got photos of them here when they were little. I can remember her walking up the hill when she was little to go to school.
I'll tell you another thing I used to do, help them with their homework.
So when I got to school, I was in standard 1, and it was really hard because I didn't understand any English. And I remember one of my first friend was Angela.
So my first outing with Min was to the ladies' toilets, or the girls' toilets, and I showed her around the school, and we became friends ever since. Well, at the time, because we were so young, I didn't know that Min was a refugee. I didn't even know what a refugee was. To me, she was just someone from another country, and I had no idea what she'd been through or what she'd gone through or how she'd even got there. And she used to come after school for a lot. But yeah, we had sleepovers and had lots of fun, and we used to do a lot of singing. This is before Sing Star was even out. And I remember she used to call her parents on the phone and speak in Vietnamese and obviously tell them where she was, and then she'd be speaking in Vietnamese and then she'd say Angie or Angela and then carry on, and that always used to make me laugh.
Yeah, it was pretty difficult. I think that for a child, making friends and being in a new group of people is always quite a difficult thing to do. But then, you know, when you haven't got the language too, and particularly because I've been through sort of a harsh sort of couple of years before we got to New Zealand, there was a real sense of having to be strong. Near the end of that first year, I suddenly realised that I was dreaming in English. And that's when I realised that actually I was understanding and speaking English by then.
I saw her as a really nice person, friendly and very honest, truthful, and that was what sort of attracted me towards her as a friend.
If we never found this love, if we never took that road.
So it wasn't until last year when I went back to Vietnam after 33 years for the first time that I realised how much of an impact being a refugee or being in a war as a child has affected me. And when I went back there, it was quite strange to try to match what I see with what I remember. I think it's made me a lot more sensitive towards other people's experiences. Being a refugee made me realise how difficult life can be, but it really made me really think hard about how I want to live my life, because it feels like a second chance here being in New Zealand. And I think life is short and I don't want to waste it. Because, you know, as a refugee, I know that you can have a lot of money and you can have a lot of wealth and you can just things that you can actually lose. But I want to spend time on building on the things that extends myself, you know, that helps other people. And what's important is friends and family. It's important to do the important things in life, but it's also so important to have fun.
Home with you to